I don't have a lint roller, so I have to go to work with fur on myself. The Nasdaq is down 24 points, and the S&P 500 is down 30. It is not looking good for the ASM comics. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're going to be reviewing the Amazing Spider-Man number 54. We're diving into another comic featuring the Spider-Goblin. Of course, spoiler warning ahead, if you haven't read the comic, we will be diving into the details of the comic itself. If you enjoyed this video at any point, make sure to leave a like and subscribe, and without further ado, let's jump right into this. Now, we've already endured so many Goblin shifts. It's moved on from Peter to Norman, back to Peter, back to Norman. There's a lot of flopping just back and forth with this Goblin spirit. So, to keep everything up to date with how this comic book begins, Spider-Man currently has the Goblin persona within him. The cliffhanger from the previous issue was just the Green Goblin spirit shifting over from Norman Osborn to Spider-Man. This comic begins with Norman Osborn waking up after getting impaled by the staff that's also combined with the Wrinkler device that Spider-Man concocted. And Spider-Man, the Spider-Goblin, is just gloating his victory in this case. It gets explained that the Green Goblin persona's entire goal was just to take over Peter Parker's body and just stay there. I suppose in this comic we get an explanation as to how the Green Goblin transferred over all of Norman Osborn's business entities over to Peter Parker and why. It seems that it was the Green Goblin's goal to just in general take over Peter Parker's body and just continue his corporation from there, while simultaneously ruining Peter Parker's life. And that would be the ultimate Green Goblin victory as his way of defeating Spider-Man. I gotta say, that's one of the most lackluster goals that the Green Goblin has ever had. I mean, I suppose it's kind of diabolical and evil to just take over his body and ruin Peter Parker's life while continuing the corporate Oscorp business. I mean, that's evil, right? Also, I want to point out that at the very beginning of the comic, literally the first page, Spider-Man / the Green Goblin says, "It's time to say goodbye. You've served your last purpose. The Green Goblin has a new home." First of all, Spider-Man / the Green Goblin is stating to Norman Osborn that he has served his last purpose. He is no longer useful. But as you're reading the comic, the Green Goblin persona actually moves back to Norman Osborn and then shifts back to Spider-Man. It just flops. But once it goes back into Spider-Man, same way that the comic originally began with it being inside of Spider-Man, Spider-Man / the Green Goblin goes, "Ah, that's better. This is the end, Norman. I'm done with you. All it will take is a signature, and Oscorp, everything you own will be mine." And so I'm just thinking, like, since, I literally am reading the book, I thought you were done with Norman Osborn. I thought we did everything. We completed everything. So why do you need the signature, man? I thought we were done with Norman. And better yet, get this, ladies and gentlemen. My dude, the Green Goblin's entire evil plan was to transfer Norman Osborn's entire business over to Peter Parker, and then that same Green Goblin entity will now live within Peter Parker's body as Spider-Man, ruining Peter Parker's life and just doing this business thing. Real evil shit, right? But he still needs a signature, a legitimate signature from Norman Osborn. Like, the Green Goblin is so evil, he does all this crazy shit, but he can't forge another person's signature? Holy shit. After the intro of the comic, we get Miss Marvel trying to break into the compartment where Norman Osborn and Spider-Man are having their duke out with the Green Goblin personality. Probably the best way to describe it. And as she's trying to get the door open, Kraven walks up and demands that Spider-Man has to deal with this situation on his own. Kraven wants to see the monster within Spider-Man. So Kraven is walking up, telling Miss Marvel to stop trying to open it and interfere. And so I'm thinking, okay, we are about to get a really cool fight with Miss Marvel. But as a traditional pattern with this current writer, anytime some form of hype action builds up and you think things are gonna go down, no, we totally don't get to see anything involving the fight with Miss Marvel and Kraven. The only thing we get is the after fight itself, where Miss Marvel just stands there and she complains that no one was there to help her fight Kraven. So we're left with our own imaginations as to how exactly that went down. Instead, we get a random joke about Dr. Connors, Jonah, and this random scientist just getting high off of Kraven's darts. Oh, and there was a joke about Wreck-Rap getting stabbed by the Green Goblin's glider Spider and him having multiple hearts and him actually just saying, "Just kidding, I don't." I really didn't understand that joke, or if it was supposed to be a joke to begin with. Rec Rap is just kind of there. As I've mentioned already, the Green Goblin persona flops back and forth multiple times, from Norman Osborn to Spider-Man, back to Norman Osborn, then to Spider-Man again. I can surely say that if you took a shot every single time the Green Goblin persona went in and out of Spider-Man this entire story arc, from issues 50 through 54, you would probably have to be hospitalized, ladies and gentlemen, for alcohol poisoning. Now, if you sat down and read the entire volume from issues 1 through 54 up until now, and play that shot game, maybe you would get buzzed a little bit at the very start, but you are not making it out alive. Finally, the Green Goblin persona ends up inside of Spider-Man's head. Now, do y'all remember the Living Brain's entire ordeal in the situation? The Living Brain had made a plan with Spider-Man, and a very convoluted one at that, where the spear combined with the Wrinkler device gets attached to the Living Brain's head, which creates this helmet. Now, Norman Osborn has to put this Living Brain helmet on top of Spider-Man's head to try to destroy the Green Goblin persona. Once the helmet gets placed on top of Spider-Man's head, it is now Spidey in his own head fighting the Green Goblin. And I gotta say, the visual representation of the Green Goblin's sins inside of Spider-Man's head look really freaking cool. I like the aspect that they added where the Green Goblin has the victims of everyone's lives that he took on his shoulders. So you get to see a Gwen Stacy on his shoulder. Now, in this mental fight, the Green Goblin sins are huge compared to Spider-Man physically. So the Goblin sins eat him right up. And of course, that's just the comic book letting us know that the Goblin sins are definitely winning and mentally taking down Spider-Man. But with the help of the Living Brain, we get a rough summary, and I mean immensely rough, of Spider-Man's entire life. Typically in Spider-Man comics, this is the most inspiring moment that Spider-Man has to endure. So it tends to be one of the more inspirational moments for Spider-Man. A good example would be ASM 500. In this comic, I feel like it dives into the most bare bones aspect of what the character has to endure. Now, that part in this comic is actually one of the more stronger aspects of this comic, but that's not saying much since the entire overall volume hasn't been making me feel anything. Like I said, it was just done better previously in other comics. So, as Peter Parker's enduring one of the hardest points in his life right now with the Green Goblin in his head, inevitably he breaks through and defeats the Green Goblin. We get a visual 2-page splash where Spider-Man is actually breaking through the Green Goblin's head, signifying that he has defeated the Green Goblin persona. Now, officially, the Green Goblin is no longer a thing, as far as we know, inside of Spider-Man's head and inside of Norman Osborn. So, we still get nice Norman back, but for now we have happy, friendly Norman Osborn. Now, on that note, both Norman and Spider-Man have a conversation together as Spider-Man's walking out. And Norman says, "Peter, you have sacrificed a lot not to destroy me, but to save me. It would make me very happy if we could call ourselves friends someday." Spider-Man pauses for a moment and then says, "Crazier things have happened." And the comic ends with Norman saying, "Yes. Yes, they have, haven't they?" And that is the end for our Green Goblin story arc, ladies and gentlemen. Finally, it is over. So, thoughts, comments, concerns? What do we think about the comic book? It's very uninspired, uncreative, very on brand with how they're running the Amazing Spider-Man comic these days. They give us just a crazy, bizarre concept like the Spider-Goblin, but they don't really write anything interesting with it. In this comic, the Green Goblin persona is literally just flying around transferring bodies. Once again, I'm gonna have to hit y'all with a below average for this comic. Anyways, that is all I have for y'all today, ladies and gentlemen. If you enjoyed this video at any point, make sure to leave a like and subscribe, and I'll catch y'all next time. Peace.